you so much for doing this. Hi, I'm Carol Baskin, and this is Cat Chat 39. Tonight we have Diane Gustafson. Am I saying that right? Gustafson?
That's fine.
Well, how should I say it?
Gustafson.
Gustafson.
There you go.
I should always call ahead of time to make sure I'm saying the names right, because I never get them right. Well, one of the things I love about Cat Chat is there's so many people that I meet on Facebook, and yet I never really get to know anything about them. I might see a few of their posts, but you were one of the people that really kind of leapt off the page to me because you did so much more than what most people do. Most people will email me and say, I saw this horrible thing, you should do something about it. And you may have emailed me something to that effect, but then you did something about it. You didn't wait for me to do something about it. And that kind of person, I think, is really rare and is a huge inspiration to other people. So that's why I was hoping you would join me tonight and tell us a little bit about your story. So first, tell me a little bit about you. When did you first know that you were a voice for the animals?
Well, I grew up with cats. Lots of cats. At one time we had 7 cats and 5 kittens in the house, so it's a lot. Never owned a dog, so I've always been a cat person. But growing up with watching television and the Wild Kingdom and everything else, and of course developing a love for cats that way and the big cats, but I never felt the need or the use to stand up than I did when I went to Great Cats that day. That was a huge learning experience for me.
Wow. So that was like a turning point for you.
Oh, big time turning point. We had gotten up that morning and decided we wanted to do something and what to do, and I was just surfing through the internet, and then I found Great Cats of Indiana, and I was like, wow, they're right outside of Lafayette. A little over an hour away, let's go. And so going there, and my husband said he didn't want to go in. That was how bad it was. We parked across the street when we saw it, and we're like, is that really it?
Oh, wow.
That can't be it. It's just right on the road. That can't be it. And he didn't want to go in, and of course, I'm of the mind of, well, we came all this way, let's go, And I mean, it's a good thing I went in for what happened afterwards, but then it racked my emotions. It was devastating to see the conditions that these animals were in, and I couldn't just let it go. And that was the turning point.
Wow. So before that time, you were a cat lover, but you said you were looking for something to do. Had you been to other zoos or other sanctuaries?
Zoos. I had never, ever been to a sanctuary. I didn't even know anything about sanctuaries. All I knew was your typical person that knew about zoos and SeaWorlds and, places like that. I had been to roadside zoos before in the past, and even then knew that there was something wrong, that it just felt wrong. But nothing that had the large cats that this place had. It just had like maybe a couple of lynx and a bear, and that's it. So this was definitely a wake-up call for me, and learning so much and just getting on the internet and finding out more and more and more about it, and I've learned more in the past 5 years than I've ever known. Thanks to you, too.
Well, you used a term that people that have done their research like you have done know it and know what it means, but for people who don't know, you use the term roadside zoo. So I'm wondering, when you first were going to these roadside zoos, did you know the difference between an accredited zoo and a roadside zoo? Or I'm always curious with people that are kind of new to something, what was their going in understanding?
I knew it wasn't going to be, when they put billboards up on the side of the road and, and you're reading them thinking, oh, all you think of is your own satisfaction. Oh, I want to do this. I want to pet this. I want to see this. Just like I pet a tiger cub at one time, I just thought of myself. This is the coolest thing ever, not thinking what happens after that, what happens to this animal after that. So with the roadside zoo, same thing. I knew there was a difference between that and like Brookfield or Lincoln Park, which is bad enough. But But going in, Lincoln Park is horrible. Have you ever been to Lincoln Park Zoo
I
in
have.
Chicago? Isn't
Yes,
it
I've seen.
awful?
When I walked into the Great Cat area or whatever they call that, the cat house, I was just, it was like stepping back in time to the early 1900s to see
Yes.
it still look the same.
Yes, jail cells, just like jail cells, So, I mean, Brookfield's at least better. At least they have expansive, places for them to run and stuff like that. But they still have to go in their jail cells at night.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, going in, and you can see how on a roadside zoo type situation how dirty it is, and it's tiny. The cages are, and you have to know. You have to know this isn't right. And so, like I said, going to Great Cats that day and seeing the horrible conditions that these cages were in, and, one of them was a silo, a hollowed out silo, and I'm like, this can't be right, where they show Chucky, the lion, supposedly Barbary lion that they had up front, and he had just mats and garbage in his mane. He just looked filthy.
Oh.
And he bothered me, I think, the most because he was just in this concrete box by himself, full of feces and garbage, and just it was horrible. And of course they would start the roaring, and he would roar back, and you felt the loneliness from him. He was lonely. You know what I
Wow.
mean? As you know, lions are pride animals. They need other lions. So I felt really, really bad. But that was definitely the awakening for me. And I just put my foot down. I couldn't stand it.
So take us through this kind of slowly, because this was like 5 years ago, you said?
Hmm.
You get out of your car, your husband's like, I'm not going in there. And you're thinking, well, we really ought to see what's going on. So you're looking at this from across the road, I'm guessing. What did
Yes.
you do next?
Well, he said, if you really want to, which any good husband does, and took me across the street, and we sat there for a minute, and the first thing I saw was a black leopard pacing back and forth, never even acknowledging that we were even standing there. And we walked in and paid our ticket to go inside this little tiny shack, and a guide came to go with us. He couldn't have been more than 18, maybe,
Mm.
and took us in, and that's when the party started. It was it was just so crowded and so broken down, and I remember going past one of the tiger enclosures, and the concrete had broken down so much that water was sitting in it, and there was algae in it. It was greener than green, and I said, don't you think somebody should clean that out? And he said, oh, that's the way they like it.
Wow. Oh
And
my gosh.
I wasn't that well versed in big cat knowledge at that time, but even I knew. I was like, I don't think so. That's the way they like it. And going past, I remember the lions. They had like there was a skull sitting there. Who knows how long this skull had been sitting there with meat and maggots on it and stuff. It had just been sitting there where they sleep, and
Mm.
just very not taken care of. And besides the cats, they also had a couple packs of wolves. They had bears. They had donkeys and alpacas, and I mean, it was just overrun, just overrun.
And when you said
And
it was really crowded, are you talking about other people, or you mean the animals were
no,
crowded?
no, the animals. They had one cage. I remember. I wouldn't be good at giving you dimensions, but it wasn't that big, and they had 9 of them crammed in, and they were passing each other. I mean, back and forth. Very close. That's all the room they had was like a walking mill. Just back and forth, and they had no room to move.
What kind of animals?
Tigers.
Oh, man.
Tigers. Yeah. They were
You
small,
know,
but
at
they were,
dinner time,
yeah.
we have to separate our tigers. Even when we have them out in that 2.5 acre enclosure, they all have to be separated or they fight. I don't
Hmm.
even know how you would feed a bunch of tigers in a cage together like
I
that.
don't either. I don't either. And they would be sticking their arms in there and everything. That surprised me that they would stick their arms in and pet them and everything. And I was like, ooh, yeah, I wouldn't do that. No, no. They very casual about it. very casual about it. But it just, the amount of, besides the repair, just the amount of cleaning, I can understand if the owner, his name is Rob Craig, if he didn't have the money for the upkeep, but he could still get his own butt out there and clean, at least have it clean. And it was just filthy. It was overrun with feces and like I said, rotting meat, and it was just horrible. And it was weird because there was another group of people with us, and they were like, oh, this is wonderful. Oh, aren't they pretty? And even me at that time, not knowing that much, knew this isn't right. This is horrible, and I can't see how anybody can get joy out of this. But they were just clicking away with the cameras, so I don't know. I couldn't see
something.
It. Mm-hmm. But that's
I'm always curious about what goes through people's minds. I mean, your reaction to that was what I would think any intelligent person would come away and say, this is wrong, I need to do something about it. And yet, obviously, most people don't do that. And I don't get that.
I don't either. They just saw pretty animals and I guess didn't take into account how they were living. But I don't know how they could do that. That was my wake-up call, and apparently it wasn't theirs. But, I've come across that a lot, with talking to people about, circuses and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, they're treated awesome. What are you talking about? And I'm like, go on the internet and just go to Yahoo or Google and type in circus animal abuse. And you're going to see videos you don't want to see. You know what I mean? But people, I think they just like to view the world through rose-colored glasses,
And with that, at least, the circus usually isn't doing that kind of thing out in front of people. So it is news to people when they see what happens. Whereas people walking through, I can't even imagine how many people must have walked through Great Cats of Indiana and didn't report them. Mm-hmm. And that's what just blows my mind. In fact, I've started using a quote by Einstein about how, the world doesn't have problems because of evil people. It's because of the people that ignore the evil people.
Exactly. I don't know. I think they want to stay blind to it. They don't want to believe it, and they don't want to see the horrors and see what happens, and they just want to traipse through life, It's sad. It's really sad. But this was definitely my wake-up call.
So how long do you think you were there?
Half hour.
And did you take photos when you were there?
Did I take photos? No, I didn't even think to, and I wish I had. I had obtained photos from a couple different other people after the fact, but yeah, of course, I wish I had. And then, of course, after everything that I did, I knew that he would recognize me if I would.
You're not getting those pictures now.
No. But like I said, I had found some on the net and talked with those people and got a hold of those pictures, and they were good pictures, and they definitely told a story, and coming to find out that he had allegations against him already from the USDA, dating back like 6 years prior to that. So at first I had the feeling of, well, maybe this guy just needs help. Maybe, I can get some people together. We can get in there. We can help. It's only an hour away. We can help him killing, da-da-da. But then when I found that out, I was like, oh, wow, this is a problem. This has been going on for 7 years at that point, so I couldn't do it. And a lot of people held that against me. I had a lot of hate mail holding that. Why didn't you offer to help? Why didn't you offer to help? And it's like, at that point, I just didn't feel like that was the road to go.
Yeah, and you're right. I think he had already proven himself by then by not taking action to fix the things that he should have been fixing before you ever even came on the scene. So there wasn't anything you were going to say or do that was going to change that for him.
Right. And he was breeding, from what I understand. He was breeding. He's the one where I'm sure that Tony, the Louisiana Tiger, came from. Tony, the mascot. Wasn't it Tony? Isn't that his name?
Mike.
That's where he came from. And I know he gave a bunch of animals to Brian out at help me out here. I can't think what the
Missing Link.
Yeah, that guy. I had a nice conversation with him. He's fun.
Oh man.
That guy is off his rocker. Wow.
He has
No, but
never called me that he's not shrieking at the top of his lungs. It's like, I know before I even get the phone to my ear who it is.
oh my God, he's just crazy. That guy is crazy. And then I don't know if it still is, but the Great Cats website, at one point it would go to his website. Did you
Oh,
know
I didn't
that?
know that. No.
Yeah, it was back when, like halfway through when they were taking the animals. Of course, I kept checking on it, and if you typed in greatcatsofindiana.org, it would immediately go to, yeah, that missing link
Hmm.
website. So I thought that
Well,
was
that's
interesting.
interesting.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. So
So,
many of these bad guys are buddies with each other and enable the abuse across
mm-hmm.
all of the different states, and because there's such a patchwork of state
Yeah,
laws.
yeah, it's awful. And as bad and horrible of a situation as Zanesville was, I think it's going to help for the animals. I really think it's going to be a help. I think it's going to change. Well, it is changing laws already. I mean, even with Ohio, starting with Ohio, you know, um, and hopefully it'll keep going. The ball will keep rolling. I mean, it was such a devastating situation, and nobody wants to see that happen again. You know.
It's already helped tremendously. Back in 2003, we had to turn away over 300 big cats, and every other year that number was doubling. And when the Captive Wildlife Safety Act, which was a federal bill that made it illegal to sell big cats across state lines as a pet, when that passed, the number the next year that we had to turn away dropped. Instead of being 500 or 600, which is what it was projecting to be, it dropped to 110. And then there have been 9 more states that have passed bans or partial bans since then. Ohio is just the most recent. But last year there were only 37 calls for help. So
Oh wow.
it's made a huge difference. And Ohio is one of the best laws they've passed so far because it doesn't exempt USDA licensed facilities. So under the you know under the current rules, the Great Cats of Indiana, they had a USDA license. They would have been
Right.
exempt from being banned from having these animals. But
Mm.
by not allowing that USDA exemption, then it gets rid of an awful lot of the next level of crud that's out
Yeah,
there.
exactly. That's why I had problems with Indiana touching any of it because I contacted so many senators' offices and this and that and everything, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, we'll help," and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, he has a USDA license. That's
Then he
not."
must be okay.
Yeah, well, it has nothing to do with us. We're Indiana Nature and Habitat or whatever, and that was it. They would turn me off. They'd be all willing to help until they found out about the USDA. So that stunk. But I
And
think
you had another bad apple there as well. The guy in Flat Rock that they did the documentary about,
um, the
the tiger next door.
hmm?
Can't think of
Hmm.
his name.
Dennis
Dennis.
Hill. Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, Dennis Hill is a piece of work too. And then come to find out that after all that and the filming and everything, that he like up and left. I don't know where his animals went. I asked Joe Taft. He doesn't know where his animals went. He said, but the place is sold and cleared out, and somebody else bought it and started a farm. So it's kind of weird. He just up and vanished into thin air. I mean, I guess it's a good thing. Hopefully, he doesn't have any more cats. You
Well, the
know.
Department of Natural Resources did step in because I think he had lost his USDA license, and then they stepped in and said you can only keep like 8 or 9 cats, and they confiscated a bunch of them. He sent a bunch of them over to Joe Taft because the DNR said if we come back and there's more than whatever X number of cats was, that they were going
Right.
to take them all. So he sent a bunch to Joe. But then it was like 2 or 3 years later, he did completely disappear off the radar. So I don't know what happened to those last remaining cats. But it's an excellent example of how the state often will not even touch regulating a facility if USDA is considered to be the one regulating them, and yet
Right.
they get inspected once a year, and surely it's an unannounced inspection. So I can't imagine that USDA showed up at Great Cats of Indiana and the place looked perfect. Not
Exactly.
with what you saw.
Exactly. And that's what I read a lot of the allegations against them and citations, and they were all for uh, the animals being malnourished, and of course the place broken down, and veterinary care, and you know, it was bad. I know that Rob did a lot of his own veterinary care, so yeah, I don't know where he got his veterinary license, but yeah, And I know a lot of cats died. Chucky, for one of them, that Barbary Lion, he died.
Mm.
He had, I want to say, and it wasn't anything major. It was something with a tooth, and he died from anesthesia.
Mm.
And that just killed me, you know, that poor baby.
I
So he never got to see what he could see, you know. That's the one I really wanted to get out.
Oh gosh.
You know, but it is nice to see, like when Lori shows me pictures and stuff. Of course, I've been out to Black Pine and I see Mufasa's pictures, and my favorite one is she has this black and white shot of Mufasa when she first got him to Black Pine, and they had gotten there at night, and it's such a pretty shot, and he's looking up at the moon, awestruck. The moonlight coming down, and like first time he's
Oh.
seen it, it's beautiful. It's a
Wow.
beautiful shot, beautiful shot, and he's turned out to be such a great cat. He's fantastic, and it's so good to see him. You know, and then Joe, of course, has taken the chunk of those animals, you know, and he just keeps expanding, and I'm just that worries me, you know. It's like his heart is just too big, you know. Sometimes you got to say no, you know, but he's
Yeah, if you look at the list of the animals that we have to turn away each year, like I said, it's continued to drop because these other states have passed bans and partial bans. But there have been 2 years where the numbers have leapt up from the continuing drop, and in both years it was huge sanctuaries that went under, and these were sanctuaries that were good places at one time, but they just kept taking in too many animals, and then they ended up going bankrupt and
mm,
having the animals all be displaced.
yeah. It's just got to change. It's got to, and it can only change with the laws. So, like you said, hopefully it's just going to get better and better, you know, and hopefully there won't be any need for any sanctuaries in 50 years, you know. They'll
Well,
be
I agree. Our goal is to put ourselves out of business. You know,
exactly.
you kind of jumped from here's what I saw to the animals are rescued and at Black Pine and at Joe Taft's. I can never remember his acronym. Do you know the name of
Uh,
his place?
Exotic Feline Rescue Center.
That's it. Um, but that didn't happen overnight. That
No, it was
was a really long process. And so, can you tell me what is it about you that made you capable of tracking down all of this stuff? What kind of work do you do that you would even know how to do that, or how did you teach yourself to do
well, to quote my husband, the internet is a wonderful place.
that?
And you can find practically anything on it. And I came home that night and I had to write everything down so I wouldn't forget anything. I wanted to remember every detail that was on my mind. And I composed a letter, and then I thought to myself, who am I going to send this letter to? And I unfortunately, they're in Idaville, Indiana, and Idaville is like a township, so they don't have any kind of chamber of commerce there. So I went to the second biggest next to it, which is Monticello. So I started doing all these businesses in Monticello, the different chamber of commerces there, of course, any kind of animal organizations, be it the WWF, be it PETA, whoever, you, Jonathan Kraft out in Arizona, anybody I could think of. I mean, I was just looking and looking and looking and looking, and every single person got this letter. And I just decided to just put it out and see who responds. And
Wow,
it took
that's
a long
interesting.
time. Yeah, just anybody. I would just sit and think, who else, you know, and get all the politicians and get. I actually Googled Great Cats of Indiana, and any business or persons that had positive things, I sent that to them too, you know. Here, you know, and see if they respond. And sometimes I got good responses, and sometimes not so good, you know. Um, of course, you know, being called names like meddling housewife and you know stuff like doesn't know anything, blah blah blah, have nothing to do but pick on somebody, and oh yeah, that's it. Um, but it was a nightly project. Every night I would come home and pour on the computer, and who else can I send this to, and who's calling me back, and how can I get some input. Start working on the TV stations, which didn't work out so well because I'm in the Chicagoland area, so I have the Chicago television stations, and since they didn't consider the Lafayette area part of their market, they wouldn't take it.
Mm.
So I contacted Indianapolis, and they had that guy from CBS pass it on, and the ball fell. I kept writing this woman and nothing. and I contacted a newspaper, if you remember Nouveau, which Lori Lovely was on, and she wrote a piece about me, and it was surprisingly unbiased. I'm kind of shocked because of how our relationship ended. She's interesting, but it was pretty unbiased. But the comments that I got underneath it were horrible, just horrible against me. I don't know if you remember reading those comments. They were just awful, about how horrible I am for doing what I did, and da 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 da, and just, and boy, if I ever see that woman, I mean, even some threatening stuff, and. Ooh,
and how long ago was that?
That would have been this. I went to Great Cats in June. That was June of 2008, and this would have been around fall, September, October. That same year.
Same year. Okay.
Yeah. The ball got rolling really quickly.
The reason I'm asking you that, there's two things going on there. One is whenever the bad guys end up in the paper, then they call on all their minions to go post nasty comments about anybody who said anything nasty about them. So you probably see a lot more nasty comments than you would just from the general public reading the article. But also there's just been such a huge difference between 2008 and now as far as what the public opinion is when they see stuff like that. I think it's greatly shift in favor of the animals, and I've loved watching this shift. But
yes.
It's happened one story at a time, like your story, starting to bring out what's happening behind these closed doors.
Right. And more people are taking notice, like you said, with films like The Tiger Next Door, films like The Elephant in the Living Room, and most recently Blackfish, with the orca. And that's just exploded, and that's wonderful. You know what I mean? The more news, the better. I realize that's off topic about big cats, but animals are animals, and mistreatment is mistreatment, and I'm glad to see. I want everybody to see it.
Well, I actually wrote down on my notes here because you were worried that you couldn't talk for an hour, and Blackfish is on here.
It's wonderful. Did you see it?
I did. I finally did.
Yeah.
I had to watch it on Netflix or something. I couldn't.
Yeah, it was on Netflix. I watched it on CNN. I couldn't believe they had it that quickly for free, and it's really shocking that somebody can show stuff like, and all the people that were on there worked for them. So it's really surprising that they were able to do that.
Yes, I thought they did a great job of getting inside the organization and using very credible witnesses.
That's what was great about it. That was great about it. And then turning to, did you see The Elephant in the Living Room?
I did. We actually, I was going to say we sell The Tiger Next Door in our gift shop. I think we might actually sell The Elephant in the Living Room in there as well. But in fact, I don't know if you know it, but Tim Harrison just recently had a bout with cancer, and they were really concerned.
No.
But he had surgery, and he's doing very well, and they think he's going to
good.
continue to. I hope you can still hear me.
There you are.
Yeah,
I got three of you at the bottom.
That is so weird. I've never seen it do that before. I don't think I'm touching anything.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I am so sorry. Yeah, I got to meet him actually last summer when we went to, they had a function at Black Pine called Wine in the Pines, where they had wine tasting and stuff. It was really nice. Hot! But probably nothing compared to what you experience in Florida, but it was, but I got to meet him, and he's really great. And boy, he can talk.
Yeah.
He can talk. So he's good to be a speaker. That's his thing. But I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad that he's better.
Yes.
That's how I got to know him, is from Elephant in the Living Room. We saw it at the Gene Siskel Center in Chicago. I knew I wanted to see it firsthand, and then I kind of wish that I hadn't, because I bawled my eyes out. I mean, guffawing, and I was just like, oh, geez. And my girlfriend's looking at me like I'm insane, and I felt stupid, but then I thought of it later on. I'm like, how could you not cry? You know what I mean? How could you not when that Lambert electrocuted himself,
That was so horrible.
Wasn't it?
Just horrible. And
it could have been stopped.
I asked them how they got that footage, and they were actually asking, I forget the lead guy that owned the cat, but they said, if ever you see anything going on out there, capture it on film for us so that we can put it on the show. And so he went out there, and I forget what he thought that it was. He didn't think it was anything to do with the electricity hurting the cat. So he was innocently enough going out there to film whatever had caught his attention, and then left the camera rolling during that whole thing when they discovered that it was the power being left on and the cat in the mud and electrocuting himself. But it was footage that, you would never in a million years get that except for this freak accident.
Mm-hmm.
Except that there are no accidents. So I think that was really meant to come to light to show the horrid way that people keep these animals.
It is. And look at, you just reminded me of something. When I was a child, I want to say probably like 8 or 9, my parents took me to meet a family who had a cougar in their house. And the cougar was defanged and declawed. But my parents, of course, thinking it's a big cat. And, of course, being a kid, that was the most awesome thing ever, And and the cat chased us around and played with us and everything else. And I think back to that now, and I think, wow, that it could still hurt you, regardless. And what kind of a life is it living like a dog, like I said, it took something like Great Cats to just wake me up and go, there's some bad things going on around here. I never knew how much, you know what I mean? How many bad things are going on around the United States. And I got to Roy Boy, who is a tattoo artist in Gary, Indiana. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Speaking of junkyards.
Yes. So Joe Taft got his tigers, one of which, I think he got 3 of them from him. I know one of which, I want to say was one of Mike Tyson's tigers, Storm, I want to say. I know he has that. But I actually saw how they were. Not only did Joe, or I'm getting people mixed up now, Roy Boy, take these tigers around in trailer jails, and just parade them around, and advertise his tattoo studio. When I was there one time with a girlfriend who was getting a little heart tattoo, which I wouldn't even, the place is, it was filthy. But he's famous, so that's what she wanted. But anyway, and they said, you want to come down and see our tigers? And I was like, sure. And they took me downstairs in the basement, and here's these 2 cages in a basement, in a cold, damp, dark basement. And there was one tiger in one cage with just some hay, and another one in another cage, and that was my introduction to a liger. This one's
and was this before 2008?
Oh yeah, way. Well, probably late 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea it went back that far. That guy had tigers that far back.
Yeah. He was always known for it. And I had seen him before driving around with him out by the mall and stuff, and even then, though, I knew that a basement is not a place to keep an animal like that, and of course they looked sickly, they when they're supposed to be, around 400 or 600 pounds, they were like, I don't know, maybe 250, so they looked sick, and for males, they looked sick. Goodness. But at that time, being a 19-year-old kid and no internet.
That made all the difference, was the internet.
It did. I couldn't do anything, but it haunted me. It haunted me for a long time, the foul conditions, that they were in. Like, oh, well, they don't always stay here. They get to go outside. And I was thinking, yeah, they go inside in the trailer and get driven around. Where he got them, I don't know. But there's been little things happen to me here and there that just, I guess, now that you're making me remember things that led up to that, to me just finally seeing Great Cats and how horrible it was, and just saying, I've got to do something. And I remember when I was talking to Jonathan Kraft of Keepers of the Wild, and he said, the problem is, it's not getting the place shut down. That's enough work. It's trying to find some place to take all these animals. trying to find homes for all these animals. He goes, the USDA doesn't want to incur the cost of doing this, so that's where your problem is. So that's when I knew, okay, now I got to start talking to people about, can you take one or two? Can you take one or two? And the hardest actually was the bears. Nobody wanted to take the bears. And I was
They're
like,
really hard to cage, man. They dig like crazy.
oh, do they? No,
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
like
know that.
nothing will hold them.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know Black Pine ended up taking the bears, so I was glad for that. They took the bears and they took, I don't know if they took all the wolves. I know they took a good portion of the wolves.
Mm.
But some people came forward, some people said no, but eventually, like I said, they mainly got broken up between Joe and Lori, at Black Pine, which I'm glad. Have you been to Black Pine?
I haven't. I have met Lori. She's come to our fur ball down here a couple of times, I think. And we just had in, I think, November of last year, there was a big cat workshop in North Carolina, and Lori was there. In fact, I owe Lori one. I should call her and let her know. The food that we fed our cats was made by Natural Balance, and they sold out to Del Monte. And Del Monte said, we're losing money on this thing. We don't want to do this anymore. And all of a sudden, I've got no food. And so at the conference, I would ask around. I was like, what do you guys feed the cats? And almost everybody feeds the Walmart trash diet, where Walmart throws away their food and these people come pick it up and feed it to their cats. But Lori actually feeds a decent diet to the cats and told me about the place she uses. So we've contacted them. Now we have food again.
Oh, that's good. Now, do you feed your cats roadkill as well, deer and
No,
stuff like that? You won't?
no, no.
No.
We want to know that all the food that they eat has been inspected by USDA. As little as we know that USDA doesn't inspecting anything, at least somebody is looking at
Right.
it, because
Right.
there could be parasites or problems
Sure.
in the roadkill that we wouldn't be able to identify.
Sure, that makes sense. I know that a lot of those sanctuaries that I had spoken with, that they take roadkill from people or farms that, okay, my cow died, okay, we'll take your cow, things like that.
That
Um,
just scares me to death. It's like those animals die for a reason, and
that's
so
that's
I
what
don't
I
want to
thought
feed
with
that to my cats.
that's what I thought with the cow thing. I mean, the deer is one thing, but the cow, okay, why did it die? Is it just die from old age, or was it
How often
sick?
could that happen?
Exactly. But I always wondered about that. Um, so that's where I'm at. I was happy to hear that they closed him down. I don't think he's doing any more business. Um, I I should go by there just to see if those cages are even up. But I don't think the USDA will allow him to have any more animals. I don't think. Do you know?
Well, what happens when people lose their USDA license is a lot of times they just continue to operate without one, and USDA won't do anything about it. So it would be good to go by and see, but I haven't heard anything about him operating out of there in years. I did, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I did hear about him having some cats out at a Renaissance festival or something in Colorado, I thought.
Oh, really?
But before I go there, I want to kind of get back onto the timeline. So you contacted this newspaper reporter. She did the article. People were jumping on your case. What happened next?
I tried to ignore them. Uh, I let that go because there was way more negative than positive, and I unfortunately she had given out my email, and I started getting lots of emails, and
Oh dear.
I had to so I started getting lots of that, and of course my husband told me ignore all of those. So after contacting you and Jonathan and Joe Taft and everybody, they said to keep pushing on the USDA. The problem was, even with all the citations that they had, they were telling me they had three ALJs, three administrative law judges, and one was in Iraq, one was somewhere else, and one was here, and his docket was way full. And because of the fact that the cats were under no immediate threat of death, that it was way down on the docket.
Mm.
So I had to keep calling on that, and I finally got through to one of the agents, and he actually came out and took a statement from me. So that was nice. I felt like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. And I think after that, the ball really started rolling, and he started, I don't know why, if it was that, but Rob started voluntarily giving up some of his cats, little by little, 3 here, 4 there, and I thought, well, maybe, and maybe he was thinking the same thing, if he gets it down to a manageable amount, he can start working on some repairs and stuff. But I'm trying to remember what came down, that there was something with the USDA. Let me look at this, because I printed this out because I wanted to see there was something from a complaint.
And if you can kind of let me know the dates on it. What I'm trying to illustrate is how long these things take, because it's almost always 5 or 6 years between the time that somebody gets the USDA to take a look at something and the time that the person actually loses their license.
Well, I started my thing when I went there. It was June of 2008, and the last thing that happened was May 2012. So that's 4 years, right there. But like I said, even when I found that out, they had allegations and citations against them from 7 years back before that. But of course, I didn't know about that at the time. But from the time I started my crusade, it was up till May of 2012, and that's when I remember, as I said in the paper, that Indiana conservation officers took possession of 4 tigers, a lion, a bobcat, a mountain lion, that were housed at Great Cats of Indiana. Investigators said facility Director Rob Craig has permits to possess the animals, but the inspection of the Idaho facility found possible violations to the laws governing those permits. So that was the end for him. That was it. They took them all the rest.
Wow.
And that was
so
a big
like
hush
that's
hush.
11 years from the first citations that you saw till the time that they did something. And if you think about, most of these cats live 10 or 12 years, so they spend their entire lives suffering while these cases wind their way through these overcrowded courts. And yet the public is so naive when they hear that these places are USDA inspected, or they'll hear that they don't have citations, and it's because if they do cite them, they have to do something about it, and there's just not the willpower to do that.
Right. There's more pressing issues according to them, before they take care of anything like that. So, but I think if someone sees, I always tell people, if they see something they think is wrong, if you want to do it, you got to push. You got to push hard, and you got to keep going and not let up and call and, get on it. When I was doing it, I didn't have my Facebook group at that time. That started later. You know what I mean? So I had.
And when did that start?
5 years ago. So it was like right after, I'll say about a year after, a little bit less than a year after I had gone to Great Cats, I decided to start that up. But when I first started, when I was writing all the letters and everything, actually, I'm going to take that back. I started my MySpace page first.
I was just looking to see, when did Facebook even start? Because I'm thinking maybe it didn't even start until 2006.
Yeah, it was a MySpace page first, and just trying to inform people and stuff. But I did everything on my own. Nobody helped me write letters. Nobody, pushed for anything or helped me make phone calls. I did it on my own. And now having my group, and also, I don't know if you saw, I cut my group down to 100 people. I did a major culling on my group. I kind of had to do that because I know I had some moles in the group from other unsavory types that will not be mentioned, but I'm sure you know who. And so I did a major cut down to 100 people and 100 good people. And I would think that if anything would happen, that they would help me, and I feel good about that, And when I went to go see Lori this past summer, she was like, if you're ready for a new project, I got something for you. and Tim's wanting me to help him, and I was like, okay, and he even asked my husband if he would go undercover, and, so.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's exciting.
It is exciting.
From
and I would
regular citizen to spy. I love it.
Yeah, I could put that on my tax return now. But yeah, it was nice to see and hear that it was gone. And that summer, I remember I went to EFRC, to Joe's place, and went to go see the tigers that were there, and they look so happy playing in their pools, and they're out at the outer end where he's built all that new land up and stuff. So they have huge spaces to run in, and it's just so nice. It's so nice, and it's clean. The keepers take care of it every morning, and it's clean, and it's nice to see them happy and running, and not all covered in, And I know
what a difference for those animals.
Hmm.
Man.
Definitely. Definitely. It's good to see.
Well, it's got to
But
make you feel good to know that you were able to actually bring this one to closure and some of the other stuff that you've worked on because it's so hard to ever get something to closure.
hmm, it is. Yeah, I'm proud. I'm very proud of it. It makes me feel good. That makes me feel like, okay, this is my contribution to society. And some people, I've talked to people that are like, oh, they're just animals, or whatever. And I'm like, not to me. Not to me, they're not. You know, not to me.
Well,
It's another form of slavery to me. So.
it's funny you should say that. Somebody was posting something about slavery today, and I was posting on there, well, wild animal slavery is still very much alive here in America, too.
Exactly, exactly. People don't think of it that way. People don't see like I do, and I don't have kids. I always say I have fur kids, because I have my 3 cats, and they're my babies, and I look out for them, and protect them, but some people don't see it that way, but that's how I feel.
Now that you've done this and you've learned so much through the whole process, are there, I don't want to know details of stuff that you're doing undercover. Obviously, we don't want to expose any of that, but are there other situations that you've gotten involved in that have reached a point where you can talk about them?
Not at this point. I know there's a few things going on that we're going through here and there. I know I I'm trying to think what I could tell you. There's always bad things going on in this United States where the animals are concerned, as you know. Um, uh, but things, I've told people, I've written people like Jonathan and stuff like that, and said that I'm more than willing to help in any capacity, be it, writing something, coming out, doing something, taking pictures, whatever. To help. Most recently, did you see the story about the bears that were in the concrete pits and how they finally got them out?
I wrote it on my notes. I saw it on your Facebook page that you were
Yes.
very happy to get those bears
Oh,
out.
yes. I
So for
saw
people
that
that don't
story.
know what we're talking about, tell them what that
Um,
situation was.
they were, was it Chattanooga? Is it Tennessee? I think it was, where they were keeping these bears in, they were, for lack of a better word, they're pits. They're concrete pits, and that's just where they stay, night in, night out, no enrichment. I don't even think they were fed well, and I think they had 4 or 6 of them. And the people, I remember in the story, they didn't want to get rid of them because they said that they're like in the family or whatever, or they've had them for a long time. So, and the people love them. And it wasn't so. You could see they showed people's faces when they would go in there, and all they felt was pity. And I think even Bob Barker got involved with that, which he gets involved with everything having to do with animals. Um, and so they left that the story was left like that. I think it was on Animal Planet. The story was left like that because the people would not give up. That's right. That was that show where the people would go in and try to get people to give up their exotic pets, and they wouldn't give them up. And so they left it like that. And I was just, wow. What can you do about that? And so to hear about PETA getting involved, and also help me out. What's the guy's name from Wild Animal Sanctuary, Wildcat Sanctuary? His name's
Pat
Rob
Craig.
something too. So Pat Craig. There we go. It's Craig. That's
That's the thing in common.
yeah, yeah. Pat Craig get involved, and I know I've heard he has a really great place. I've never been there, but I've heard he's really great. And him taking the bears and seeing the video that I saw of them running free, it's so uplifting. It's so uplifting to hear a good story for a change. We see so much horror and horrible pictures on Facebook all the time, all the time. It's so nice to see something happy for a change.
Isn't
So
that the truth?
yes,
And it's
yes.
such a fine line because, on the one hand, people need to be aware of what's going on out there. They don't believe it unless they see it. But then, if you're posting that kind of stuff all the time, they shut you down because or off their pages because they just don't want to see it in their feed. So it's a tough call to be able
But
to show
sometimes
just enough.
I feel like it's preaching to the choir though, because if your friends are like-minded like you, I don't think they need to see that. I know what's going on. You don't have to show me disgusting pictures. You know what I mean? I believe you. I'm with you. I'm against it. You know what I mean? And I have friends that just are constantly pumping these pictures like Animal Crush pictures and
Oh.
really horrible stuff, and then the stuff that's going on in India and
Oh,
Bangladesh and all these, really, really bad stuff with the elephants, and it's like, okay, and it's not that I'm not compassionate about it. I know you need to talk to people that don't, and if all your friends on your page are pretty like-minded, which I would think you would want like-minded friends, you need to do something else, I think.
yeah, yeah. And the difference is between having your personal page and then having a business page that deals with those issues where people are expecting, if they're getting those
Right,
kinds of feeds, that they're going to see a certain thing. But
right.
yeah, it does become heartbreaking. And I know I've had people that constantly post photographs of the cat who's going to be killed today at the shelter if they're not adopted. And it's like, I can only see so much of that before I
Yes.
just can't stand my life anymore.
Yes. I know that the cross posters, that drives me crazy too. And it's like, I don't know if saying that he's going to be killed today is supposed to, like, oh my God, I got to go, and pick him up. Maybe that does work. I don't know. But how many can you take? That's pretty much how, growing up, how my family ended up having 7 cats and 5 kittens, because they thought, well, you got 7, what's one more? And my parents just kept taking them in. I mean, neighbors would literally call. There's a little black kitten outside of my backyard, and they'd go get it. So you only have 2 hands to pet. You know what I mean? You only have 2 hands. But 3 is enough. I have 3. That's plenty.
That's a house full.
That's enough.
So I'm guessing you weren't involved in it. I'm thinking that Rob Craig showed his face many years later, like in the last year or so, maybe the last 2 years, out at the Colorado Renaissance Festival. And I believe it was Julie Hannon who had contacted me and said, I cannot believe this guy is out there with cubs. And so I don't know if they were his cubs or if he was toting them out there for one of the places out in Colorado that's notorious for breeding cubs. Not Pat Craig, but somebody else. But I thought it was you that had contacted me about that as well, so I guess maybe not.
I don't know. I don't remember hearing about that. How did she
Uh,
hear? How did she hear about that? Does she live out there?
yes, she moved out there.
Oh,
She
oh,
used to
okay.
live here in Tampa, but she moved to Colorado, and she's become quite the expert on dealing with Colorado issues.
Yeah, I do hear about her going to Renaissance fairs a lot, and yeah, dealing with the pet the cub things a lot. Um, I know Holly was one of my friends, Holly Goodwin, was trying to track down. Oh, I wish I should have written down the member of it. Some guy that she sees a lot. Quite often outside her Walmart. She lives right outside Indianapolis. That does the cub petting thing, and I found out he's based out of Florida. So um, I wish I could remember his name, but she was wanting to get involved in that. But it's like trying to find his home base was futile. I couldn't find it, because I wanted to start that, and I couldn't find it. But
It's probably Robert and Gesser. He runs something called the Zoo. It's got a dozen names, but the Zoo is the one he uses the most, and he doesn't advertise where he's from
he
because they
probably,
don't allow the public at his facility.
oh, that could be it too. But that's a horrible thing to see too, and that was a learning thing too. I mean, there's so many different things I learned about from all of you, including you, about white tigers. And I cannot believe how many people don't. Well, I didn't, so I guess I should say, but how many people don't know, about. They just think, oh, white tigers, they're rare. No, they're not. And I have to try to explain to people about that, and that's really hard to do because I think it's kind of technical sometimes, and talking about recessive genes and blah blah blah. But all you have to do is look at that video that you have. What is that white tiger's name? The one that's really deformed. That's the
Kenny.
one. Yes, that's the one I always like to show people. I'm like, there you go. You
Yeah.
know,
He was
and
one
that's
of the rare examples that actually ended up being photographed. I've been in the backsides of some of these places where they're like puppy mills that they're breeding these tigers, and the ones that they have been so scary looking. I've seen them with their eyes out on the side of their noses. I've seen them
oh,
with their teeth going in all directions and just really badly messed up. And if anybody saw the parents, they would never support the petting of the cubs or the photos in the magazines and all of that sort of thing if they saw what was being done, in how so many of them turn out, but the public never sees that, just like they don't see the
No.
puppy mill parents either.
Exactly, exactly. I never knew about it. Joe actually told me all about that because I remember when I was going through EFRC and I saw the one that he has there. And I'm like, oh, she's so pretty, and something was wrong. Something was wrong, and he said she's blind. She's been blind since birth.
Mm.
And then that's when he started telling me about the whole white tiger thing, and I was just what? You know, I mean, it's not common knowledge, and it needs to be. I actually, I had to write a letter to History Channel the other night because this is just me. I always have to tell people something. They had, it was on the show called American Restoration, and they went to, I don't know, some guy's place. I wasn't even paying attention really. My husband's watching it before bed, and all of a sudden I hear the words, "Want to see my white tiger?" And I'm like, huh? And I'm looking up from my book, and
Wow.
yeah, and it wasn't so much that and going to see this guy's, it's what they started scrolling across the bottom about how they were Bengal tigers that are very rare and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like,
Who does
okay.
your fact checking?
Exactly. So I had to write him a letter, and I got on the net, the next morning, and I said, if you're going to be, sharing information, it should be the correct information. Of course, I only had 500 characters, so I had to really whittle it down. I had to keep taking words out, but
I've been there so many times.
I know. And you sit there, and they're like, "Okay, you have 537." You're like, "Dang it!" Okay, But I think I got it. Whether it makes a difference in anybody's mind, who knows? But it made me feel good to get it off my chest. To say, hey, come on, spread the right information if you're going to be, you're part of the discovery networks, as in, learning things. Although the Learning Channel, I don't know how much Honey Boo Boo is part of the Learning Channel. I don't know how learning that is, but
Oh, great.
but I wanted to tell them, and so I still definitely do things like that, and I still protest the circus every year, and
You promote a lot of petitions, I see.
Oh yeah, a lot of them. Started them and signed them and pushed them, and a lot of people will be, oh, I don't think they do any good, and I'm like, I think they do. I really do. I mean, and not in every instance, but I really think they do.
There's kind of a scale of, there's petitions, and then there's sending an email, and then there's making a call, and then there's showing up in person. So, it's all on that
on that scale.
Yeah.
But look at for the petitions that we sent out to all those acts that were performing at SeaWorld, and how they, one by one, they dropped out. REO dropped out, and Heart dropped out, and, one by one, they're all dropping out, and I think that's awesome.
And for people that don't know what you're talking about,
Blackfish.
Okay, let's talk Blackfish.
All of the mistreatment at SeaWorld that was, brought up by Blackfish and the movie Blackfish, and which is available on Netflix, and the mistreatment of the orcas, and I don't know how much you knew about orcas. I didn't. I learned a lot from watching that documentary.
I didn't know anything about orcas. Or
exactly.
Dolphins. If it's not a cat, I wouldn't know anything about it.
Exactly. So it really was a learning experience. And then when you learn about them being ripped away from their families and how they're all not related, and that's why they all fight and they rip each other apart, and it's horrible. And so people are trying to shut them down now. And so they're having some kind of thing in February called Beer and Barbecue or something like that. And they had all these bands that were going to come and play. But with the release of Blackfish and these people seeing this, and then petitions asking them not to come, artists have dropped out one by one, and I think 9 have dropped out so far.
Wow.
From playing, yeah. So I think it's pretty awesome, and in that way, petitions do work.
That's a wonderful example of the public being heard by the entertainers that rely on the public for their support.
Exactly. And then, of course, the wonderful Bob Barker. He comes forward for everything. There's
Gotta love him.
Yeah, there's a special place in heaven for that man. I mean, wow. He has done so much for the animal community. He's 90 years old and still kicking it. God love him.
And he's just gotten more and more active the older he's gotten. Back when he was doing The Price is Right. He was known for not allowing any fur coats on the shows or allowing
Right.
the models to wear fur coats. And I thought, wow, this guy is just so far ahead of his time. And then the older he's gotten, the more things he's gotten involved in, saving all of those lions from the circuses in Bolivia and bringing them to the United States and sending them out to Pat Craig's place, the Wild Animal Orphanage. Or it's not Wild Animal Orphanage. What's it called?
Wild, isn't it just Wild Animal Sanctuary?
Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Okay. Okay. I get that confused because there's a wild cat sanctuary too, and I get those two confused.
Yeah, and there was a wild animal orphanage, but it went
Right.
bankrupt in 2011.
That was a bad one. I remember that. He's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know he was with. That's the Lion Arc movie that they're releasing, right? Isn't that
Right.
Have you seen that? Because I haven't
I
gotten
have
to see it.
not. No, I haven't.
Yeah. I keep watching because I have them on my Facebook page, and they keep saying where it's being released, and I'm like, Chicago. When is it coming to Chicago? But I thought maybe where you are, maybe it had been released already.
I think they said it was coming to South Florida sometime soon. I need to go back through my emails because I really do want to, even if I have to travel, I want to go see that.
Sure, sure. I do too. I do too. And
What
so
about
it's
the
good.
Paw Project?
I haven't seen it. I want to see that one too.
It was good.
Was it good? I wonder
You know
if they're going
what
to release that
I don't know.
on Blu-ray or something, soon.
Well, you can buy it at their site, and it's pretty cheap. It's like $10. You can buy the
Oh,
DVD.
really?
Yeah, if you
Okay.
just go to thepawproject.org, you can buy it there. But what I loved about it was a similar example to you. It was one woman looked at this situation and said, "This is wrong. I can fix this," and
Right.
she jumped in, and this was the movie was the culmination of all of the effort that she put in to start getting it banned in cities in California for vets to declaw cats. And to see her go through all the same stuff that you did, where the public was coming out, they were calling her names, the veterinary community was, pushing back because they make a lot of money off of this sort of thing.
Sure.
And it's kind of like that old saying that when you are visionary, people will first ridicule you, and then they laugh at you, and then they hate you because they see you're gaining momentum, and then they join you. And so you had to go through all of those steps to get to the success that you saw and the success that she's had.
Yeah, it's easy to get dissuaded, especially when you get, like you said, you get the more they hate you, and you're getting hate mail, and you start to question yourself, and, especially when I was getting mail saying, why didn't you help him? Why didn't you help him? And maybe I should have helped him. No, I could have. He had the angel and the devil, on your shoulders, and making you doubt yourself,
And
So
your family can have a huge impact. My family's been very supportive, but my daughter was having nightmares because of one of these bad guys that, we think he's crazy and he's likely to do something really awful, and it gives her nightmares. I don't worry about anything, but it bothers me that she's worried about it.
Yeah. That's awful. That's awful. Yeah, I've had threats and stuff against me too, and I've been called a hypocrite because I eat meat. That's my favorite one. The vegans get down on me because I eat meat, and why can I save a lion but I don't want to save a cow, and blah blah blah. And this is actually the one thing that Brian guy from the Missing Link place, brilliant thing he did tell me is because I told him about that, and he said, I've had people say the same thing, and what I tell them is I don't eat predators. And I've loved that, and I've used that since then. I don't eat predators. They don't eat me. It's a good arrangement, And it's really, it really is. But I've a lot of people against me on that one. I mean, do you eat meat?
I'm a vegetarian, but I do eat fish.
Okay.
And I know fish are not vegetables, so I'm really not a vegetarian in the strictest sense.
I could go that way if my husband could go that way, but he no, and I couldn't. Yeah, I could do the just fish thing, but we don't eat that much red meat anyway, and that's a whole nother story about the treatment of them. But it's like one thing at a time too. I've had people, what about this or what about that? I'm like, I'm focused. You really need to focus on one thing, one thing at a time. We'll look at this, and the mail I got, I just had to start deleting it, and not even, if I didn't recognize who it was from, I just deleted it because it just got to be too much. I thought
It
about shutting down.
amazes me the amount of passion that people who abuse animals will put into their attacks on anybody who calls them out on the carpet.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like, don't these people have jobs?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, one of the ladies that got down on me a lot, her name was Denise Flores, and Denise Flores ran. I keep wanting to call it Tiger Haven, but that's not it. It's in Ohio, and she had to give up her cats. She was actually on that same Animal Planet show, trying to make people give up their animals.
Was it
And
animal intervention or?
yeah, that was it. I think that was it. That sounds right. And she wouldn't at the time, but since the law's coming down in Ohio, she did. Um, she was a big fan of Rob Craig, and I guess used to help him
Really?
summers. Yeah, yeah, helped him out in the summers and this and that, and And as I'm talking to her, because I never knew when I got on the phone if somebody was going to be pro me or against me, and she was one of the people that said, maybe you should go out there and help him out and help him clean and help him do this or that, And I'm like, well, maybe he should get that 17-year-old boy that gave me the misinformation to get out there and clean, But you never knew when you got on the phone if somebody was going to be nice or nasty, and I had both, but you got to muddle through it, and it's hard sometimes. It is hard because it makes you feel bad, and you just feel like you could just throw it in really easy and just say, that's it, I give up. I don't need this hassle in my life. I don't need this flack, But if you're passionate enough about it, and you've seen what I saw, at Great Cats, and it haunts you, and you think about them, and you think about when the wintertime and them being very cold, and yeah, you can go on and you can make a difference. I'm proof positive that one person can make a difference and make a change if they want to.
And what is the name of your group in case there are people who need a support group because they're going through the same thing? Would they be able to join your group, or how would they contact you?
They can. The best thing I could tell them to do, because right now we had to make the group secret because of all the moles. The best way to do it would be for them to email me and at bigcatangel@ymail.com and let me know, and then I will get them in. And it's a shame that I had to do that. I wanted to leave it open for everybody, but this one man and his minions are fierce and mean and nasty. And they've hacked my group just too many times, and we have to be careful now, And then it got to the point where members were dropping out because they were being harassed, And so I didn't like that, And I knew there were moles in my group because I was having screenshots taken of my group and posted on this man's page, And I'm like, well, I know nobody that is with me is going to do something like that, so. I would gladly take on more people that are like-minded like us. But like I said, the name of the group is Stop Private Ownership of Exotic Cats. But like I said, now that it's marked secret, you won't be able to just type it in, it'll pop up.
I didn't realize that.
But if they email me, I will get them in. I will send them the link, and then they will be able to go from there and get in. Right now, I cut it down from 1,700 to 100 members, so that's a big cut.
I was talking to a lady on Facebook yesterday, and she was saying that she had been put in Facebook jail because of the fact that some guy had said something really awful about hurting an animal, and she had called him out on it, and Facebook blocked her from being able to post for several days. And it was like, it was such a minor thing, and she told me what she said, and it was, there was no foul language or anything like that. It was just a difference of opinion. And yet the person you're talking about, I know for a fact, is just constantly out there emailing or contacting and posting on pages of people that are our supporters or people that they see that I've liked or that I've followed. And it sounds like you're having the same issue on your group.
Yep.
And he says on his Facebook page all the time, I'm in Facebook jail again for another 10 days. And they just keep letting this guy come back. And it's like, how many people does he have to harass before Facebook just says, stop it?
Exactly. And I think he has like 4 or 5 pages,
different names and aliases.
Yeah, he'll just flip back and forth anyway. But he is just, he's a bane to our existence right now. And you can just shrug him off. he's an idiot, so you just let it go.
It all works out in the end, finally.
Yes. Yes.
It's just, you have to have the patience of Job to put up with the idiots.
It's like we just got to pray for karma.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh. I saw on your, speaking of Facebook, I saw on your Facebook that you were talking just a few days ago about having chocolate wine.
Yeah.
I love chocolate wine.
That was the first time I'd had it. It was awesome.
That is the best stuff ever.
I saw it at the supermarket, and my husband made a face, and I'm like, let's just try it. And they had it in, the one we had was chocolate coconut. They also had plain, of course, and chocolate peanut butter, and like chocolate cherry, and a couple other ones. Let's just try it. It was delicious. It was fantastic.
Chocolate cherry, that even sounds better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Now you're going to have to go look for it.
I think I'm going to do that on my way home tonight.
Time for chocolate wine.
Oh, yes. Well, I think it's been an hour. I didn't pay attention to when we started, but I'm thinking it was right around a quarter of. So what would you like people to know about you, or what message would you like to send to others who are contemplating speaking up for the animals?
Well, I would like to tell them to get with a group, if not mine, another one on Facebook, to find like-minded people that will assist you. It's hard doing it by yourself. It really, really is. You can do it. I did it, but it's hard. So it's nice to find like-minded people and just get out there and, if you find something that upsets you and you want to speak out, contact every single solitary person. The email's free. Write yourself a good email, be tactful, be eloquent, to the point, not too long, and send it out and get it out to as many people as you can, and then follow up. It's a lot of work, but if you're passionate enough about it and you have the heart, do it.
Well, I think that is excellent advice. And often people will tell me, I don't know what my life passion should be. People always say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And they just don't know what that thing is that they should be devoting their life to. And I often say what you just said, which is, what makes you really mad? If it gets under your skin that badly, that's something you probably have a good deal of passion about, and you could really make a difference in that arena.
That is the definition of passion. It's like, it's not just love. It's anger. It's emotion. It's something rather than apathy.
Which is
what drive.
I don't think there's anything worse than apathy.
Just sitting back. Armchair activist. Just sitting back. Yep, somebody should do something about that. Which a lot of people do. But yeah, if more people would stand up. And I think the whole blackfish thing and the SeaWorld thing is really, really snowballing and is making people more aware of that. So maybe that'll branch out into other animals and other situations now. We'll see. We'll see.
There's definitely a trend, and I like the way it's going. I'm excited.
I do too. I saw the people at the parade that got arrested, when they jumped out in front of the float and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'd so do that. And my husband's like, no, I would not let you do that. I'm like, I said, I know I get arrested. He goes, no, that's a big deal. You don't want to get arrested.
When my husband and I were getting married, he said, our vows should be like the Constitution, and we should describe how we will deal with each other so that we can always go back to this Constitution if anything should ever happen after the honeymoon phase. And so I'm trying to think, what vows should I write? And so the first thing that came to mind was, I vow to never protest naked.
He was probably like, okay. I don't think I'd do that either.
Especially now, I wouldn't. Oh, Diane, it's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, everybody, this was Cat Chat 39, and on the show notes page, you will be able to see the photographs that Diane was telling you about earlier. These were not photographs that she took of the facility, but she did locate some photos later that I was able to post to show the just dismal conditions there. And when you see them, you just won't be able to believe that these animals were actually being kept this way. But thanks to Diane getting involved, they're not being treated that way anymore, and now they're in good sanctuaries and living a good life. And so thank you again so much for doing that.
Absolutely. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, that's great to hear because I know you've been through it.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.